Good morning. I wanted to make a quick video. I haven't made one in a while, and I wanted to talk about a something new that I'm trying, and it has to do with spatial thinking, thinking in volume and in movement. One of the things I remember hearing and reading is that although people with aphantasia cannot visualize, that they often excel at thinking about space, spatially, and in movement. And thinking back, I have never been able to visualize. Like I've had aphantasia pretty much my whole life, and only just now within the last year I'm starting to feel like I might be getting close to hypophantasia. Um, but one of the things that I did on a few occasions, I can remember while listening to music, I could think in motion. Like I could think of a thing, even though I'm not seeing it, even though it has no color, it has no form. I'm thinking of a thing moving with the music. Maybe it's of myself flying. Um, and again, there's no visual component to this. I'm not seeing anything. I'm just imagining the movement along with the rhythm or the tune of the song. And it's very seldom that I did this in life, but there are periods in which I was going to the gym and I'd be listening to music, and that would be something that I would do. Or I might imagine like a spacecraft, and it's not that I can see anything in it, but I'm imagining the, the space where things are. That's actually largely how my visualization is nowadays too. There's no strong visual component, no real visual component. It's mostly just imagining um, things without seeing them, and it can include a lot. Well, I'm saying it happens most of the time, but um, it is imagining the like a hollow thing, right? Um, so I was talking to someone at an art night, and new person, I hadn't met them before. Him and his partner were there, and she happened to have strong visual ability. It seemed like um, not necessarily hyperphantasia, but pretty strong, just based on the brief conversation I had. And he surprisingly had aphantasia, which was always cool to be able to hear and find out about. And he also confirmed, like, yeah, he's really good at thinking spatially. And so while I'm, exploring art and drawing, I'm diving into Kim Jung-gi, and I'm trying to figure out and reading, like, why was he such a great artist? Like, why is his illustration so compelling, at least to me and millions of people? And one of the things that came out of that is that he thinks not just in two-dimensional thinking, he thinks in volume. And I think he's reported to have said that, like he thinks in volume. And so that's a commonly known thing, that when you draw, you want your images to feel like three-dimensional. You don't want it to feel flat or look flat. And so it's not something that was like brand new, but I started to realize, like, oh, yeah, this is an important part of like who I am, and many people with aphantasia, is like our ability to think in volume and to think spatially. And excuse me, what I'm trying recently within the last couple of days is to think about an object not only sensorily, so like with color or general outline, shape, um, smell and texture and all those things, but to try to imagine it as if it were a three-dimensional model in my mind, and think about it as far as how it moves. Like if I were to rotate it, how would it appear? Like how is it really composed in space? And I found that to be interesting so far. Like, it feels like the object is more solid in my imagination. It feels more real. Um, and so that's just something new. I'd love to hear from other people, but again, mostly I'm also just making these records for my own history, um, so I can go back and see what I was doing, even if it's like 5 years from now. So yeah, that's the thing, is thinking about things as if they were 3D models that are moving in your head. And I can, surprisingly, I can do that. Like, I can imagine the shape of a three-dimensional box. I can also draw a three-dimensional box, a sphere, cylinders. Like, I can draw all those things, which many people who have vivid imagery, mental imagery, they cannot do that. And so, but for me, it's like I've studied and understand perspective. I've looked at and drawn things. And so it's actually quite easy for me to construct like a mental model of that. And while it's not like a static, vivid image or anything close to that, I can think now that I can think in colors, and I can think about things in um, texture and smell. I'm basically taking the three-dimensional, like, empty wireframe and like holding along with it. It's not necessarily applied to it, but it's the feeling of like, oh, yellow. I remember yellow. I remember a cube. I can imagine a cube shape spinning, and I'm going to hold within my mind the concept of yellow, that this cube is yellow. Um, and so that's something I'm practicing. That's the new technique. It, I'll just say it from an artist perspective, using my imagination while I draw, as I'm drawing things, like thinking about them more and more intentionally in a three-dimensional manner, like drawing the backside of things through them as if they were transparent, thinking about like if I were holding this and turning it, how will it feel as I'm drawing it, has also changed drawing significantly. Like, it feels different if there's an emotional component to it of like, oh, I'm actually touching this thing. And as I look at my sketches, it's like, oh, it's easier, and they're different. I won't go into it, but and just as to end with a little tidbit, um, I found it interesting, and I have two kids, and my son, he's only 10 and a half or so, but I remember when he was a kid, compared to his sister, he struggled to get his words out, and he'd have to like restart a sentence like 3 or 4 or 5 times. And I think that can be common in kids, but my daughter, on the other hand, is like very fluent from when she was like very young, just like no difficulty at all. And with my son, I wasn't worried about his lack of fluency compared to his sister, but I do find it interesting that in talking to them, he does have a more vivid imagination and mental imagery. Some of the things that he described, I'm like infinity mirrors of like a jar within a reflection, just looping and going deeper and deeper and deeper. And I'm like, he's seeing this now. So that's the first thing. Again, there's this strong correlation between a stronger visual mode of thought versus the verbal mind. So the right hemisphere versus the left hemisphere. That was compelling. And there was something else that he shared with me. Oh yeah, about how there's a difference between when he visualizes with his eyes open, the same thing that he visualizes with his eyes closed. So when he visualizes with his eyes open, he said it's like watching something on YouTube. It's like on a small screen and he's watching it. But when he imagines that with his eyes closed, it's like he's immersed in it, and it's like full screen and he's there. And I've never had anyone explain that to me, that experience to me. I wonder if it's like common in people who visualize. I've read people say like they can't visualize if their eyes are closed, or they can't visualize if their eyes are open. So I'm sure it varies from person to person, but it is perhaps helpful to understand that, at least for my son and perhaps many other people, that visualization is stronger when you close your eyes. Maybe that's why people say close your eyes and imagine a scene, because less sensory input from coming from the external world allows more like a richer experience in the inner world, like for you to tune in more, since you're not your mind's not tracking as much, nearly as much like visual stimuli. So that's another thing. So I guess practice with eyes open, but definitely practice with eyes closed. And that's all I have to say for today. All right then, thank you. And we're done.